A Soviet submarine commander stares at the launch button. Two officers are screaming at him to fire the nuclear torpedo. One vote stands between you existing and a thermonuclear apocalypse that would have killed 100 million people in the first hour. His name was Vasili Arkhipov, and you've never heard of him, because the greatest heroes of the Cold War are the ones who said no when the world demanded annihilation. For 44 years, two superpowers played chess with nuclear weapons, spy networks, and entire countries as pawns. Every secret mission, every covert assassination, every close call with total destruction was hidden from the public, until now. This is the Cold War you were never taught. 101 facts that reveal the espionage, the near misses, the technology and the insanity that almost ended human civilization. Let's begin. Number 1. The Cold War started with a betrayal nobody saw coming. On the 22nd of February 1946, American diplomat George Kennan sent an 8,000-word telegram from Moscow with one chilling message. The Soviet Union will never cooperate, only conquer. Within days, it reached President Truman. Within months, it became the blueprint for 50 years of global conflict. One telegram changed everything. Number 2. Joseph Stalin wasn't playing games. At Yalta in 1945, he promised free elections in Poland while smiling at Roosevelt and Churchill. By 1947, every Polish opposition leader was dead, imprisoned or in exile. Roosevelt died believing in cooperation. Stalin had already decided on war. Number 3. Winston Churchill gave the conflict its name and its image in one brutal sentence. On the 5th of March 1946, in a small Missouri town, he declared to the world, "An iron curtain has descended across the continent." Stalin heard it in Moscow. He called it a declaration of war. He wasn't wrong. Number 4. The first weapon of the Cold War wasn't a bomb, it was starvation. In 1948, Stalin blockaded West Berlin, cutting off 2.5 million people from food, fuel and medicine. He gambled the West would abandon the city rather than start World War III. He didn't count on 277,000 flights. Number 5. For 15 months straight, Allied pilots landed in West Berlin every 3 minutes. They carried coal in winter, medicine for the sick, and candy for children who'd never tasted chocolate. One plane crashed every single week. Not one pilot refused the mission. Stalin blinked first. Number 6. Stalin lifted the blockade on the 12th of May 1949, humiliated without a single shot fired. The city he tried to starve into submission became the symbol of Western defiance. But that same year everything changed. The Soviets detonated their first atomic bomb, 4 years ahead of American predictions. The nuclear arms race had begun. Number 7. A British physicist handed Stalin the atomic bomb. Klaus Fuchs worked on the Manhattan Project while secretly passing every detail to Soviet intelligence from 1941 onward. His betrayal shaved at least 2 years off the Soviet nuclear program. He confessed in 1950, served 9 years and walked free. The damage? Permanent. Number 8. Nobody called it the Cold War at first. Journalist Walter Lippmann coined the phrase in 1947, and it stuck for one terrifying reason. Both sides understood this war would be fought with spies, proxies, and paranoia, everywhere except the battlefield that actually mattered. Direct confrontation meant mutual extinction. Number 9. The CIA was 2 years old when the Cold War began. The KGB had been perfecting the art of making people disappear since the 1930 seconds. The Soviets had training camps, torture manuals, and a decade-long head start. The body count proved it. Number 10. Senator Joseph McCarthy claimed to have a list of 205 communists working in the U.S. State Department. He waved a piece of paper during a speech in 1950, but never showed anyone the names. It didn't matter. Between 1,950 and 1,954, over 2,000 Americans lost their jobs based on nothing but accusations. Careers destroyed, lives ruined, no evidence required. Number 11. The Korean War proved both superpowers could destroy entire nations without ever fighting each other. On the 25th of June 1950, North Korea invaded the South. Within 3 years, 5 million people were dead. The US and Soviet Union never declared war on each other, but they learned they could burn the world by proxy. Number 12. General Douglas MacArthur wanted to drop 30 atomic bombs on China to win Korea. He had targets picked. He had planes ready. President Truman fired him instead, live on national radio. The line between Cold War and World War III was a single order Truman refused to give. Number 13. By 1953, both sides possessed hydrogen bombs 1,000 times more powerful than Hiroshima. The world had split into 2 nuclear-armed camps, each capable of ending civilization in an afternoon. And Stalin's death changed nothing. Nikita Khrushchev took power promising peace, then sent tanks into Hungary in 1956, killing 2,500 protesters in 2 weeks. But the real madness was just beginning. Number 14. The CIA tried to kill Fidel Castro 638 times and failed every single attempt. Poisoned cigars, exploding seashells, a wetsuit laced with tuberculosis bacteria, a pen rigged to inject poison, all failed. The most targeted man in Cold War history lived to be 90. His would-be assassins just looked incompetent. Number 15. On the 1st of May 1960, a U-2 spy plane was shot down deep inside Soviet territory. The US lied, claiming it was a weather research aircraft that drifted off course. 2 days later, Khrushchev revealed pilot Francis Gary Powers alive, captured and ready to testify. Eisenhower's lie collapsed on live television. The Paris Peace Summit collapsed hours later. Number 16. The Berlin Wall went up in one night. On the 13th of August 1961, East German soldiers rolled out 27 miles of barbed wire through the heart of Berlin, while the city slept. By sunrise, families were separated by armed guards and concrete. Some wouldn't see each other for 28 years. The first person killed trying to cross was shot 11 days later. Number 17. At least 140 people died trying to escape East Berlin. Guards received cash bonuses for successful kills. Some victims bled out in the death strip while West Berliners watched, unable to help. The wall stood for 10,316 days. Every single one was enforced with bullets. Number 18. For 13 days in October 1962, humanity stood at the edge of extinction. Soviet nuclear missiles in Cuba, American warships blockading the island. Kennedy estimated the odds of nuclear war at somewhere between 1 in 3 and even. Millions went to bed wondering if they'd wake up to mushroom clouds. Number 19. On the 27th of October 1962, the world almost ended in the darkness beneath the Caribbean Sea. A Soviet submarine, hunted by US destroyers, lost contact with Moscow. The captain and political officer wanted to launch a nuclear torpedo. Launch required unanimous consent. 2 officers voted yes. Vasili Arkhipov voted no. He's the only reason you're alive. Number 20. The same day, a U-2 pilot accidentally flew into Soviet airspace over Alaska. Soviet MiGs scrambled to shoot him down. American fighters scrambled to protect him. Both sides armed with nuclear air-to-air missiles. The pilot escaped by minutes. Neither Kennedy nor Khrushchev were told how close they came until it was over. Number 21. The famous red phone hotline between Washington and Moscow was installed after the Cuban Missile Crisis. It wasn't a phone. It wasn't red. It was a teleprinter that transmitted text in English and Russian, but it meant leaders could communicate in hours instead of days, critical when 15 minutes could end the world. Number 22. Kennedy was assassinated 13 months after the crisis. Khrushchev was ousted 11 months later. The 2 leaders who stared into the nuclear abyss and chose to step back were both gone within 2 years. The Cold War continued without them, colder than ever. Number 23. Vietnam became the war. America couldn't win and couldn't escape. Between 1965 and 1973, the US dropped more tonnage of bombs on Vietnam, Laos and Cambodia than all sides used in World War II. 58,000 Americans died. Estimates for Vietnamese deaths range from 1 to 3 million. The most powerful military on Earth lost to guerrilla fighters in the jungle. Number 24. The Gulf of Tonkin incident, the event that triggered America's full-scale Vietnam War, may never have actually happened. On the 4th of August 1964, US destroyers reported being attacked by North Vietnamese torpedo boats. Declassified documents later revealed sailors probably fired at radar shadows and weather patterns during a tropical storm. Thousands died over a misunderstanding. Number 25. Soviet leaders watched Vietnam and took notes. Proxy wars work. American patience has limits, and you never need to risk your own soldiers when you can arm someone else's. It became the Soviet playbook for the next 20 years. Afghanistan, Angola, Nicaragua. Always arm the klezmo, underdog. Always let America bleed. Number 26. In 1968, the Soviet Union crushed Czechoslovakia's brief experiment with freedom. Alexander Dubček tried to introduce socialism with a human face, freedom of speech, freedom of press, freedom of movement. Soviet tanks rolled into Prague. Over 100 died. The message was clear. You leave the Soviet bloc one way, in a coffin. Number 27. That same year, US soldiers massacred 504 unarmed Vietnamese civilians in the village of My Lai. Women, children, elderly. The army covered it up for over a year. A photographer finally leaked pictures to the press. The images of bodies in ditches destroyed whatever moral high ground America claimed. Number 28. The US dropped 2.7 million tons of ordnance on Cambodia between 1969 and 1973 in secret, without congressional approval. Nixon kept the bombing hidden from the American people while telling the public he was winding down the war. The chaos helped the Khmer Rouge seize power in 1975. Within 4 years, they'd killed 2 million Cambodians. Number 29. On the 30th of April 1975, the last helicopters lifted off Saigon rooftops. Desperate South Vietnamese, people who'd worked with Americans, fought alongside them, trusted them, clung to helicopter skids. Some lost their grip and fell. The images broadcast worldwide. The richest, most powerful nation on Earth fleeing a country it couldn't conquer. Now let's talk about the war nobody saw. The spies, the moles, and the invisible killings. Number 30. Kim Philby was the British intelligence officer who briefed MI6 and the CIA on Soviet espionage while secretly working for the KGB for 30 years. He compromised hundreds of operations. Dozens of Western agents were executed because of him. He escaped to Moscow in 1963, lived there until 1988, and never once expressed regret. Number 31. Julius and Ethel Rosenberg were executed for passing atomic secrets to the Soviet Union in 1953, the only American civilians executed for espionage during the entire Cold War. Julius was guilty. Ethel's involvement is still disputed. Both died in the electric chair at Sing Sing. Their sons were orphaned at ages 6 and 10. Number 32. Oleg Penkovsky was a Soviet military intelligence colonel who became one of the West's most valuable spies during the Cuban Missile Crisis. His intelligence gave Kennedy the confidence to call Khrushchev's bluff. The KGB caught him in 1962. He was executed in 1963. His information may have prevented World War III. Number 33. East Germany's Stasi secret police employed 91,000 officers and 189,000 civilian informants in a country of just 17 million people. That's one spy for every 63 citizens. Neighbors spied on neighbors. Parents informed on children. Lovers betrayed lovers. An entire society weaponized against itself. Number 34. The KGB pioneered active measures, not just spying, but creating reality. Forged documents, fake news planted in foreign papers, disinformation campaigns. In 1983, they spread the lie that the US military created HIV divided by AIDS in a lab. The rumor spread across Africa and Asia. Millions believed it. Some still do. Number 35. The CIA illegally spied on 7,200 American citizens between 1967 and 1974 under a program called Operation Showers. Anti-war protesters, journalists, civil rights activists all had files. All surveilled without warrants. Congress discovered it in 1975. Nobody went to prison. Number 36. Aldrich Ames was the CIA's most damaging mole. A Soviet spy who sold secrets for $4.6 million. He compromised over 100 intelligence operations and caused at least 10 CIA agents to be executed. The KGB literally paid him in cash-stuffed shopping bags. He was caught in 1994 after living in a mansion the CIA should have known he couldn't afford. He's serving life without parole. Number 37. In 1955, the CIA and MI6 dug a tunnel from West Berlin into East Berlin to tap Soviet military phone lines. Operation Gold was an engineering marvel. They listened for 11 months before the Soviets discovered it. Decades later, the truth emerged. The KGB knew about the tunnel from day one. A British mole told them before construction even started. They let the tapping continue to protect their source. Number 38. The SR-71 Blackbird was a spy plane, so advanced it's still partially classified. It flew at 85,000 feet, and Mach 3.2, so high and fast that if a surface-to-air missile locked on, the pilot just accelerated and outran it. It photographed 100,000 square miles per hour. Over 4,000 missiles were fired at SR-71 seconds during the Cold War. None ever connected. Number 39. Corona spy satellites revolutionized espionage. Between 1960 and 1972, they captured over 800,000 images of Soviet military sites. The film canisters were ejected from orbit, parachuted through the atmosphere, and snagged mid-air by modified C-119 cargo planes flying over the Pacific. If they missed, Navy divers would recover the capsule from the ocean. They never lost one. Number 40. The Great Seal. Bug was a wooden gift presented to the US ambassador by Soviet schoolchildren in 1945. It hung in his Moscow office for 7 years, transmitting every conversation in the room. No batteries, no wires. It was powered remotely by microwave beams from a building across the street. The tech was so advanced that when the British discovered it in 1952, they couldn't figure out how it worked. Number 41. In 1985, the year of the spy, a dozen Americans were arrested for espionage. The Walker spy ring alone, led by a Navy warrant officer, had compromised over 1 million encrypted messages. Soviet intelligence considered US naval communications an open book for nearly 2 decades. Number 42. The Moscow rules weren't written down, but every CIA officer operating in the Soviet Union knew them by heart. Assume you're under surveillance at all times. Never ignore your gut. Trust no one completely. Everyone is potentially compromised. Break the rules, and you disappeared into a KGB interrogation cell, or worse. Number 43. Oleg Gordievsky was a KGB colonel who spied for British intelligence for 11 years. When the Soviets grew suspicious in 1985, MI6 executed an exfiltration straight out of a spy novel. They smuggled him across the Finnish border in the trunk of a diplomat's car. He brought intelligence that helped end the Cold War. He's still alive and still in hiding. Number 44. The CIA's Technical Services Division built weapons disguised as everyday objects. A pen that fired poison darts, an umbrella that injected ricin pellets, cyanide pills hidden inside hollow teeth, explosive briefcases, lipstick pistols. James Bond was fiction, but Q's workshop was very, very real. Number 45. The KGB's weapon of choice was poison. In 1978, Bulgarian dissident Georgy Markov was waiting at a London bus stop when someone jabbed his leg with an umbrella. He felt a sharp sting. 4 days later, He was dead, killed by a tiny ricin pellet fired from the umbrella's tip. The assassin was never caught. The KGB never confirmed involvement. The autopsy proved it happened. Now, the technology of annihilation. Number 46. Mutually assured destruction mad was the insane logic that kept the peace. If you launch, I launch. If I launch, you launch. Both sides die. No winners, no survivors, no second chances. The strategy was lunacy formalized into nuclear doctrine. It worked for 50 years because fear of extinction outweighed the desire for victory. Number 47. By 1986, the world's nuclear arsenal peaked at 70,000 warheads, enough firepower to destroy human civilization 20 times over. The US had 23,000. The Soviet Union had 40,000. Neither could use them without guaranteeing their own destruction. Deterrence worked because annihilation was mutual. Number 48. The B-52 Stratofortress was designed in 1952 to deliver nuclear bombs to Moscow. Some of those same planes are still flying today. Pilots fly aircraft their grandfathers flew. The B-52 is scheduled to remain in service until 2050, a 100-year operational lifespan for a Cold War relic that refuses to die. Number 49. Operation Chrome Dome kept nuclear-armed B-52 bombers in the air 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. If the Soviets launched a surprise attack, American bombers would already be airborne, already armed, already heading towards Soviet targets. The program ended in 1968 after several crashes. At least 3 nuclear weapons were lost forever and never recovered. Number 50. Broken Arrow is the Pentagon's code for a lost or stolen nuclear weapon. Between 1950 and 1980, the US military admitted to 32 Broken Arrow incidents. How many remain classified is unknown. At least 6 American nuclear bombs are still missing, somewhere on Earth or at the bottom of the ocean. Number 51. In January 1961, a B-52 carrying 2 hydrogen bombs broke apart over North Carolina. Both bombs fell. One landed intact. The other's parachute failed. It slammed into a field at 700 miles per hour. 5 of its 6 safety mechanisms failed. A single low-voltage switch, one switch, prevented a 3.8 megaton detonation. The bomb was 260 times more powerful than Hiroshima. It almost erased Goldsboro, North Carolina, from existence. Number 52. On the 26th of September 1983, Soviet early warning satellites detected 5 American ICBMs launching toward Moscow. Protocol required immediate nuclear retaliation. Launch officers awaited orders. Lieutenant Colonel Stanislav Petrov decided the system was malfunctioning and reported a false alarm. He was right. Satellite sensors had mistaken sunlight reflecting off clouds for missile exhaust. He saved the world. The Soviet military reprimanded him for filing improper paperwork. Number 53. The doomsday clock measures how close humanity is to self-inflicted apocalypse. Created in 1947, it started at 7 minutes to midnight. During the Cuban Missile Crisis, it hit 2 minutes. In 2023, after Russian nuclear threats over Ukraine, it reached 90 seconds. It's never been closer. Midnight means extinction. Number 54. Reagan's Star Wars missile defense system never actually worked. But the Soviets didn't know that. They spent billions trying to develop countermeasures, diverting resources from an economy already collapsing under military spending. A science fiction fantasy helped bankrupt a superpower. Sometimes the best weapon is the one you never build. Number 55. Intercontinental ballistic missiles could hit any city on Earth in 30 minutes. Submarine-launched ballistic missiles cut that to 15 minutes. By the 1,980 seconds, American and Soviet leaders had less time to decide the fate of human civilization than it takes to watch a sitcom. 15 minutes from detection to annihilation, no do-overs, no second chances. Number 56. Nuclear submarines were the ultimate doomsday weapon. Silent, invisible, always at sea, each carried 24 ballistic missiles with multiple warheads, enough firepower to obliterate a continent. The US operated 41 ballistic missile submarines. The Soviets had 62. If one ever surfaced and launched, the war was already over. Number 57. The nuclear football is the 45-pound briefcase that follows the US president everywhere. Inside, attack options, secure communication devices, and procedures for emergency alert system activation. A military aide carries it in shifts, always within seconds of the president. It contains the power to end the world and fits under an airplane seat. Number 58. For 20 years during the Cold War, the US nuclear launch code was 0000000000. Not a joke. The Strategic Air Command thought complex codes might slow launch procedures during a Soviet first strike. They prioritized speed over security. The world's most dangerous weapons were protected by 8 zeros until 1977. Number 59. Project Iceworm was a classified plan to hide 600 nuclear missiles under the Greenland ice sheet, aimed at the Soviet Union. Denmark owned Greenland but had no idea the plan existed. Engineers discovered the ice was unstable, tunnels would collapse within years. The US abandoned the project in 1966. Denmark found out in 1995, 29 years later. Number 60. Able Archer 83 was a NATO war game simulating nuclear release procedures. The Soviets intercepted communications and thought it was real. They placed nuclear forces on highest alert. Bombers were fueled and armed. For 10 days in November 1983, the world balanced on the edge. Declassified Soviet documents later revealed how close both sides came to launching by mistake. Number 61. Between 1945 and 1992, over 2,000 nuclear weapons were detonated in tests worldwide. The US conducted 1,054 tests. The Soviet Union, 715. Entire Pacific islands were vaporized. Radioactive fallout circled the globe. Cancer rates near test sites in Nevada, Kazakhstan, and the Pacific remain elevated today. We poisoned the planet, practicing how to destroy it. Number 62. The Tsar bomber was the largest nuclear weapon ever detonated. On the 30th of October 1961, the Soviet Union tested a 50-megaton hydrogen bomb, 3,800 times more powerful than Hiroshima. The fireball was 5 miles wide. The mushroom cloud reached 40 miles high, 7 times the height of Mount Everest. The shockwave circled Earth 3 times. It was never deployed. It was a message: we can destroy everything. Number 63. Chernobyl reactor number 4 exploded on the 26th of April 1986, releasing 400 times more radiation than Hiroshima. The Soviet government waited 3 days before admitting the disaster. By then, radioactive clouds had reached Sweden. Firefighters were sent into the burning reactor without radiation suits. Most died within weeks. The Soviets called them heroes. They never told them they were being sent to die. Number 64. The CIA funded abstract expressionist art as a weapon against Soviet realism. Jackson Pollock's chaotic paint splatters were promoted worldwide as symbols of American creative freedom. The artists had no idea they were cultural Cold War weapons funded by intelligence agencies. Some would have refused if they'd known. Number 65. Radio Free Europe and Voice of America broadcast uncensored news behind the Iron Curtain. The Soviets jammed the signals with white noise and static. The US boosted transmitter power. It became a war of radio frequencies. Millions risked arrest just to listen. Information became ammunition. Number 66. The space race was a proxy war fought 200 miles above Earth. When Yuri Gagarin orbited the planet in 1961, the Soviets won the propaganda victory. When Neil Armstrong stepped onto the moon in 1969, America won the ultimate flex. The real message to Moscow: if we can land 50 tons on the moon, we can deliver 50 megatons to Red Square. Number 67. Sputnik terrified America more than any weapon. On the 4th of October 1957, the Soviets launched a beach ball-sized satellite into orbit. Americans looked up every 90 minutes and watched Soviet technology pass overhead. The logic was simple and horrifying. If they can orbit a satellite, they can orbit a nuclear warhead. The panic created NASA, transformed STEM education and militarized space. Number 68. The Apollo program cost $25.4 billion in 1,960 seconds money, over $280 billion today. It was never just about science or exploration. Every Saturn V rocket launch was a demonstration to the Kremlin. American rockets can deliver precision payloads anywhere. The moon was a proof of concept. Moscow was the real target. Number 69. Soviet cosmonauts carried a gun in orbit, the TP-82, a triple-barreled survival pistol. Not for alien invasions or mutinies, but for bears and wolves. If a Soyuz capsule landed in the Siberian wilderness, the crew might wait days for rescue. American astronauts carried similar weapons. Space wasn't the danger, landing was. Number 70. The Soviet space program suffered catastrophes they hid for decades. In October 1960, a rocket exploded on the launch pad at Baikonur, killing at least 126 technicians, engineers, and military personnel in an inferno of burning propellant. The disaster was classified until 1989. Even the chief designer's name, Sergei Korolev, wasn't revealed until after his death. Soviet triumphs in space were real. So were the body bags. And then, slowly, impossibly, the thaw began. Number 71. Détente was the idea that East and West could coexist without annihilating each other. Between 1969 and 1979, it meant arms limitation treaties, trade agreements, and even a joint space mission, Apollo and Soyuz docking in orbit in 1975. Astronauts and cosmonauts shaking hands 140 miles above a divided world. It was beautiful. It didn't last. Number 72. The SALT I and SALT II treaties limited nuclear arsenals on paper. In reality, both superpowers just shifted production to weapons systems not covered by the agreements. Détente controlled the arms race. It didn't end it. Missiles were renamed, relocated, and redesigned. The arsenals kept growing. Number 73. The Soviet invasion of Afghanistan in December 1979 killed détente overnight. The US boycotted the 1980 Moscow Olympics. The Soviets boycotted Los Angeles in 1984. Diplomacy collapsed back into posturing. The guns never stopped firing. They just moved from Southeast Asia to the Hindu Kush. Number 74. Afghanistan became the Soviet Union's Vietnam. From 1979 to 1989, over 15,000 Soviet soldiers died, fighting CIA-armed mujahideen. The US funneled billions in weapons through Pakistan. A young Saudi named Osama bin Laden joined the fight. The Soviets withdrew in defeat. The blowback came 12 years later on the 11th of September 2001, number 75. Ronald Reagan called the Soviet Union an evil empire in a 1983 speech. Soviet leader Yuri Andropov called Reagan a warmonger bent on nuclear confrontation. Rhetoric hardened. Missile deployments accelerated. The old leaders who remembered World War II were dying off. The new generation had only known the Cold War. That made them more dangerous. They'd never seen what real war looked like up close. Number 76. Mikhail. Gorbachev became Soviet General Secretary in March 1985 with a radical idea. Reform the system without destroying it. Glasnost meant openness. Perestroika meant restructuring. He thought he could control the changes. He was wrong. Once Soviet citizens could speak freely, they demanded freedom. The empire cracked from within. Number 77. The Reykjavik summit in October 1986 almost ended the nuclear age overnight. Reagan and Gorbachev came terrifyingly close to agreeing to eliminate all nuclear weapons within 10 years. The deal collapsed when Reagan refused to limit his Star Wars program. Both leaders left disappointed. But the conversation changed everything. It proved abolition was possible, if not yet politically feasible. Number 78. On the 12th of June 1987, Ronald Reagan stood at the Brandenburg Gate and demanded, "Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall." State Department officials tried to remove the line from the speech. Reagan insisted it stay. It became the soundbite that defined the braced. Endgame. 2 years later, the wall fell. Number 79. The Berlin Wall came down by accident. On the 9th of November 1989, East German spokesman Günter Schabowski misspoke during a press conference, announcing that travel restrictions were lifted immediately without delay. Thousands of East Berliners rushed the checkpoints. Guards, overwhelmed and confused, opened the gates. History pivoted on a bureaucratic screw-up. Number 80. The first person through Checkpoint Charlie didn't run. He walked, calmly, testing whether guards would shoot. They didn't. Within hours, Berliners were dancing on top of the wall with sledgehammers and champagne. By dawn, the symbol of the Iron Curtain was rubble and souvenirs. The impossible had happened. Number 81. Germany reunified in 339 days, the 3rd of October 1990. The fastest merger of two countries in modern history. East Germans got freedom, democracy, and Coca-Cola. They also got unemployment, inequality, and culture shock. Not everyone adjusted. Some East Germans still miss what they lost, not the dictatorship, but the stability, the community, the sense that someone was in charge. Number 82. The Soviet Union dissolved on the 26th of December 1991. Mikhail Gorbachev signed the resignation papers, and the red hammer and sickle flag came down over the Kremlin for the last time. The empire that had terrified the world for half a century ended not in nuclear fire, but in paperwork and bankruptcy. The Cold War was over. The victory party started before anyone asked what came next. Number 83. When the USSR collapsed, 27,000 nuclear weapons were suddenly scattered across 4 new countries: Russia, Ukraine, Kazakhstan, and Belarus. 3 nations inherited nuclear arsenals overnight without asking for them. By 1996, all 3 non-Russian states had voluntarily given up their nukes in exchange for security guarantees. Ukraine's 2022 invasion proved those promises were worthless. Number 84. The economic cost of the Cold War is almost incalculable. The United States spent over $8 trillion on nuclear weapons alone, not including the Pentagon budget, covert operations, or proxy wars. The Soviet Union bankrupted itself trying to match American spending. Imagine what $8 trillion could have built. Schools, hospitals, infrastructure, research. We chose bombs instead. Number 85. The human cost is even worse. Proxy wars in Korea, Vietnam, Afghanistan, Angola, Mozambique, Nicaragua, El Salvador, and dozens of other battlegrounds killed millions. Most victims were civilians. Most were poor. When the Cold War ended, the superpowers declared victory and went home. The dead stayed buried in unmarked graves. Number 86. Operation Condor was the CIA-backed campaign across South America, where US allied military dictatorships disappeared at least 60,000 political opponents between 1975 and 1983. Torture, assassination. Babies stolen from executed mothers and given to military families, all to stop communism. Democracy could wait. It did for decades. Number 87. Not everyone celebrated the Cold War's end. KGB officers watched their world collapse in real time. One of them was a junior intelligence officer stationed in Dresden, East Germany, burning files as protesters stormed his building in 1989. His name was Vladimir Putin. He never forgot who won. He's been trying to win the sequel ever since. Number 88. The peace dividend never materialized. US defense spending barely dropped. New enemies replaced the old. The surveillance infrastructure, black sites and drone programs built to fight the Soviets were seamlessly repurposed for the war on terror. The Cold War ended. The war machine didn't. Number 89. Today, 9 countries possess nuclear weapons. The US and Russia still control 90% of them. Arms control treaties are expiring. Hypersonic missiles can evade detection. The Cold War is over, but mutually assured destruction is permanent. The weapons remain, the doctrine remains. Only the enemy has changed. Number 90. The children who hid under school desks during nuclear drills are grandparents now. They remember duck and cover. They remember the fear. Today's generation doesn't. That might be the most dangerous thing of all, forgetting how close we came, how fragile peace is, how easily the world can end when people stop believing it's possible. Number 91. The Cold War lasted 44 years. From George Kennan's long telegram in 1946 to Gorbachev's resignation in 1991. It killed millions in proxy wars. It cost trillions in weapons that were never used. It nearly ended human civilization at least a dozen times. We survived not because we were smart, but because a handful of people, Vasili Arkhipov, Stanislav Petrov, Oleg Gordievsky, and others whose names we'll never know, chose peace over protocol, tomorrow over orders, humanity over annihilation. Number 92. Every close call, every near miss, every time the world came within minutes of nuclear war, survival depended on individual human beings making the right choice under unimaginable pressure. Not systems, not safeguards, not treaties. People. Imperfect, fallible, terrified people who said no when everyone around them screamed yes. Number 93. The nuclear launch codes, the spy networks, the submarines lurking beneath the Arctic ice, all of it was designed for one purpose: deterrence through the threat of total annihilation. It worked. For 44 years, no nuclear weapon was used in war. But it worked doesn't mean it was safe. It means we got lucky, over and over again. Number 94. The closest we came to World War III wasn't a political crisis or a military invasion. It was technical failures, miscommunications, and accidents. Sunlight on clouds, a training tape loaded into a real system, a Norwegian research rocket. Machines nearly ended humanity because machines can't tell the difference between an attack and a glitch. Humans barely could. Number 95. The Stasi files, declassified in the 1990 seconds, revealed that tens of thousands of East Germans are still discovering who betrayed them. Friends, colleagues, spouses, children. The files stretch 69 miles. Some victims don't want to know, others can't stop searching. The psychological scars of the Cold War will outlive everyone who lived through it. Number 96. The fall of the Berlin Wall was broadcast live around the world. 1 billion people watched the impossible happen in real time. But reunification was messy, painful and incomplete. The physical wall came down in 1989. The invisible divisions, economic, cultural, psychological, persist 35 years later. Some borders can't be demolished with hammers. Number 97. The Soviet Union's collapse created 15 new nations overnight. Some became democracies, some became dictatorships, some descended into civil wars that killed tens of thousands. The end of the Cold War wasn't the end of conflict, it just redistributed the violence to places Western cameras didn't care about. Number 98. The intelligence agencies, CIA, KGB, MI6, Mossad, Stasi, didn't disappear when the wall fell. They rebranded. The surveillance states built to fight communism pivoted to fighting terrorism, then fighting cyber threats, then fighting each other again. The Cold War ended. The espionage never stopped. Number 99. Every nuclear weapon built during the Cold War still exists in some form. The uranium and plutonium don't decay for thousands of years. Warheads were dismantled, but the fissile material was recycled into new bombs or sits in storage waiting to be. We can't uninvent nuclear weapons. We can only choose, every single day, not to use them. Number 100. The lesson of the Cold War isn't that deterrence works or that freedom defeats tyranny. The lesson is that humanity can create weapons capable of ending all life on Earth and then spend decades pointing them at each other without pulling the trigger, not because we're wise, but because we're just barely sane enough to be terrified of ourselves. Number 101. The Cold War is over, but its children are still in charge. Putin was KGB. Xi Jinping's China learned from Soviet mistakes. America's defense budget is still built on Cold War logic. The weapons, the strategies, the paranoia, they didn't disappear. They evolved. The war that defined the 20th century is shaping the 21st. We're still living in its shadow, and that shadow is darker than most people realize.